Tadhana is a Filipino word that means fate. What will be? What do we think will happen after a relationship where the girl's heart was shattered and broken? Many things will run through your mind. Will fate work in this situation and bring them back together, seeing that the girl is heartbroken and sad? Or will they move on with their lives and go their separate ways? Mace and Anthony find themselves surrounded by a broken relationship. Will fate work for them? In the opening scene of That Thing Called Tadhana, Mace is in the airport, trying to reduce her load, since it's over the maximum traveling weight. She goes back to the attendant for check-in, but the load is still too much. Mace already feels frustrated because she has ended up throwing some things into the trash just to reduce her load. While Mace is trying to figure out what else to remove from her box, a man, Anthony, comes over to her. Anthony offers to help her carry some of her things in his suitcase, and also gives her his extra luggage allowance. Mace just stays mute, and Anthony starts to wonder if he made the right decision of lending a helping hand. Mace still goes ahead to trash the jacket she just took out of the box. Anthony helps her up from the floor, and after staring for a while, probably thinking of the best decision to make, she agrees, and they start to transfer her clothes to his suitcase. Mace even goes ahead to remove the underwear she threw in the trash, and adds them to Anthony's suitcase. Mace goes for check-in again, and her luggage weight is now okay for her to proceed. On the plane, Mace is watching a movie and crying profusely. Anthony, sitting beside her, is confused, and looks for a way to distract himself from her wails. The air hostess comes to Mace with a pack of tissues, but she says she doesn't need it. As the air hostess walks back with the tissue, Anthony collects it from her, and Mace ends up using the whole pack. They finally arrive at their destination, and wait at the baggage claim area to collect their bags. Mace is shocked at the way Anthony was able to fit all his belongings into his suitcase, but he doesn't have a proper answer to give her. Mace almost missed her box as she was talking, but with the help of Anthony, she recovers it before it can pass by. After they put the box on the trolley, Anthony starts to move it, but Mace says she has another bag coming, so they wait. What Anthony says while they wait for her second bag makes her feel like she's been judged because she has too much luggage. But it isn't Anthony's intention to make her feel that way, and he explains what he meant. Anthony and Mace go out to board a taxi to get to their respective homes. A taxi stops in front of them, but Mace, instead of entering, tells the mushy couple beside them to enter the taxi. It seems like their public display of affection was irking her. Another taxi comes, and Mace still doesn't want to enter, claiming that she doesn't feel like going home. Later, Anthony and Mace are in a restaurant eating, when Anthony notices the tattoo on her hand. He asks her about it, but she says it's just a star, and doesn't have any artsy meaning. Mace asks Anthony about the tattoo on his body too, and he tells her he has more on his back, and it has a personal meaning to him. Mace asks to see the tattoo on his back. Anthony is shocked, and asks if she's serious, and it turns out Mace wants to see the tattoo. Anthony turns and shows her the tattoo, which seems nice to Mace. They stare silently at each other before Mace breaks the silence, and she asks Anthony his reason for visiting Italy, the place they caught the plane from. Anthony's visit to Italy was for a vacation. Anthony is currently 29, but he dreamt of going to see the Colosseum with his mom before he turned 28, but unfortunately, his mom didn't make it. Mace thinks Anthony's mom was probably busy. However, Anthony tells her he lost his mom to breast cancer when he was 26. Mace immediately apologizes, because she seems to have brought back sad memories because of her questions. Anthony tells Mace of his experience when he saw the Colosseum, and how he even left a space behind him while taking a selfie, because he felt his mom was there with him. Anthony notices Mace couldn't relate to all he was saying about the Colosseum, and finds out she's never been there before. He is shocked that someone could go to Italy and not visit the Colosseum. But it's like Mace had a very bad experience in Italy, and it has left her with bad memories. She doesn't even want to be reminded of her experience in Italy, and tells Anthony not to bother asking her why she hates it, because she isn't in the mood to talk about it. After their meal, they sit outside, and Mace finally starts to talk to Anthony about her experience in Italy, and what caused her experience there to be bad. Mace and her boyfriend have been together for the past 8 years, until what happened when she went to Italy. Last April, he went to Italy for work training, and was supposed to be back in September of the same year, but he was retained at the company for 2 years. Even though Mace didn't like the idea, the company was offering him twice his normal pay, so he decided to stay back, and told her it was their future. Mace decided to visit her boyfriend, and went all the way to borrowing money and using all her savings just so she could buy her ticket. It was a surprise visit, but when she arrived, she was shocked to her bones. Her boyfriend was already with someone else. He tried to sweet-talk her and make excuses, saying that the girl was his colleague at work, and she was just a friend. But in the end they finally broke up. Mace's boyfriend ended their 8-year relationship with 7 words that still ring a bell in her ear. "I no longer love you, please leave," were the exact words he told her. What pains Mace the most is the fact that she was with her boyfriend for 8 years, and she ended up being dumped. It's like the whole picture just plays again in Mace's mind, and she starts crying hard. All she tells Anthony is that her boyfriend could have at least told her what she did, and not just dumped her like that, because she can't believe he'd wake up one day and stop loving her after being with her for 8 years. But Anthony thinks that her boyfriend not loving her anymore is enough reason for a breakup. From there, they go to a bar, and there's a love song playing. Mace sings alone before Anthony joins her in the singing, and she spends the remaining time crying with her head on his shoulder. Mace wakes up on a bus with Anthony and is shocked. She was actually the one that told Anthony she wanted to go to Baguio, but when he mentions to her that they're on their way to Baguio, she's shocked and can't even remember telling him anything like that. There's a movie playing in the bus, and Mace tells Anthony that the movie reminds her of her ex-boyfriend because she once watched the movie with him. Anthony begs her not to make another scene on the bus, like she did crying on the plane and refusing tissues from the flight attendant. And also at the restaurant, when she shouted at a woman to pick up her calls, because it had been ringing for so long and the ringtone was disturbing her. But Mace defends herself for every single instance of making a scene, especially the movie she was crying over in the plane. Mace starts to talk about John Lloyd being in the movie, and even goes ahead to say her ex-boyfriend has a resemblance with John Lloyd. Anthony asks to see her ex-boyfriend's picture, so that he'll judge for himself if the guy looks like John Lloyd. When Mace shows him a picture of her ex-boyfriend, he just laughs in a very mocking way, as he can't see the resemblance. Anthony concludes that beauty is really in the eye of the beholder. The bus stops for passengers to do some necessary things before they go on their journey. Anthony is already down, and he waves to Mace, who is still inside the bus, to come down and eat. She hesitates before going down eventually. When Anthony drops the food on the table, Mace picks up the bottle of ketchup and starts to spread it on the hot dogs. But Anthony notices what she's doing and quickly removes his hot dog, because he doesn't eat ketchup. Mace apologizes for not asking him before putting ketchup on the hot dog, and that she did it because she's already used to her ex. That's the way he likes his hot dog. Anthony wonders why every single thing reminds Mace of her ex, and decides to mention many other things, to see if they might have a connection to her ex. It turns out that every single thing he mentions has a connection with her ex. Anthony is shocked, and now understands how she feels, seeing her boyfriend in everything around her, and reminding her of their times together and how he eventually dumped her. Mace wants to forget about her ex-boyfriend and move on, so she strikes a deal with Anthony. Her friends once employed this technique of striking a deal to forget her boyfriend, and it helped her. So Mace and Anthony strike a deal that she'll give him 1 peso anytime she mentions anything related to her ex-boyfriend, or even tries to check him on any social media. Anthony thinks 1 peso is so small for that kind of deal, and it won't cost her much, so he tells her to increase it to 1,000 pesos. After a little bargaining, they agree on 100 pesos. Anthony asks Mace what she'll do with all the money he'll be keeping for her as regards the deal they made. Mace decides that her friend donated her own to charity, so she may donate it to an NGO that supports women that have been emotionally murdered by wicked men like her ex-boyfriend. Anthony stretches his hand for her to drop the money for their bet, because she mentioned her ex-boyfriend. Even though Mace thinks it's not fair to start dropping the money, she still does it anyway. They're back in transit. Mace wants to forget about her ex-boyfriend, but doesn't know how to. Anthony tells her it's easy, and that his forgetting his ex just came all of a sudden. Mace tells Anthony that it's hard for her to forget him, because she loves him. Anthony tells her it'll take her like 17 years before she forgets him, because her love is extraordinary. However, she could probably either drink all night, cry, pick any guy, or find love again, just so she could forget her ex. Then he drops a quote from Scott Fitzgerald. They finally arrive in Baguio. Anthony lists some interesting places, and asks Mace to choose which one she'd like to visit. But all Mace wants to do is forget her ex. They're about to climb the staircase, and Anthony offers to help Mace carry her box, but she refuses and struggles up the stairs with her boxes on her own. Mace barely makes it up the stairs, and when she's down, Anthony offers her a drink and helps her with one of her boxes. At an art gallery, Mace is wondering what Anthony's staring at before she decides to ask. It is then he tells her that he used to be a painter in high school, but stopped in college because he felt insecure, as there were so many people that were better than him. At this point, he thinks he's forgotten how to paint, because the only thing on his mind now is doing designs for clients. While they're at a table in a restaurant, Mace gives Anthony something to do. She wants him to illustrate a story she wrote, in the form of a painting. Mace tells Anthony the circumstances that surrounded her first story, and the lesson she learned from writing it. She thinks that by now, she's supposed to be a great person already. Mace then raises her mug and makes a toast. Anthony wants to hear the story Mace said she wrote in college, but she hesitates to tell the story, because it may sound too dumb. Eventually, Mace tells Anthony the story of an arrow that woke up one morning and had a heart pierced through it. The arrow searched for the owner of the heart, but couldn't find it, even after asking around. At a point, the arrow felt lighter, even with the heart still pierced through it. One day, while the arrow was still moving about with the heart, someone asked the arrow for how long it had been looking for the owner of the heart, but neither the arrow nor the heart replied. Instead, the heart just moved slowly out of the arrow. Even though the story is weird and doesn't end well, Anthony still thinks it is a nice story anyway. From there, they go to a local spa for a body massage. When the attendant asks if they'll take a couple's room, Mace doesn't hesitate to answer and denies the attendant's thoughts of them being a couple. Anthony is a very sarcastic person and loves to use everything Mace says to catch fun. Anthony starts telling Mace not to be too fast in answering, because he can remember her admiring his abs at the restaurant when he raised his shirt to reveal his tattoo. Mace is wondering where Anthony is getting the idea that she was admiring him, but she in turn makes fun of him, that he doesn't even have a beard but a pot belly. At this point, Anthony keeps quiet. It seems someone is finally ready to reply to all his touches of sarcasm. Mace tells the attendant that she wants her massage hard, and Anthony says he wants the same too. Since Anthony wants a hard massage, Mace tells him to show the attendant his so-called abs that he claims to have. Anthony feels shy and just raises his shirt, but puts it down immediately, like a child hiding something. Typical Mace, she sleeps while she's being massaged. However, Anthony is awake, staring at Mace as she sleeps. After the massage, Mace walks briskly to Anthony, and she's angry at herself for dreaming about her ex. Anthony asks her what the dream was about, and she narrates it. In the dream, she and her ex went bungee jumping in Macau, the highest takeoff point in the world, at about 15,000 feet. Going bungee jumping in Macau was one thing she and her ex had planned to do, but never got to do till they broke up. But now she's dreaming of it. While they were about to take off in the dream, she held his hand and closed her eyes, but she felt his hand leaving hers. When she opened her eyes, he was already gone. He jumped without her. Even though she wanted to jump after him, she couldn't find herself doing it, because she felt very helpless at that point. After Mace is done narrating, Anthony also narrates his one dream of her that he had, of them walking down a road. When Mace asks for the remaining part of the dream, Anthony tells her that's all. With tears in Mace's eyes, they stare at each other. In the next scene, Mace and Anthony are at a restaurant. Mace drops 100 pesos on the table for Anthony without him even asking, because she already knew the price for talking about her ex-boyfriend, and she didn't want to break the deal. At that point, she begins to tell Anthony about some things that went on with her and her ex while they were still together. Mace, while dating her ex, thought that at least marriage plans might surface, and she was ready to give up everything just to be married to him. But in all the 8 years they dated, he never asked her to marry him. Anthony, too, drops money on the table and begins talking about his ex. It turns out that Anthony's ex also broke up with him because she wanted to get married, just like most women. But Anthony, not like he didn't want to get married, wasn't ready for marriage at that time. So she left him, and even when he tried to get her back, he couldn't. Even though he thinks it was stupid, he just left her. He thought it was better for fate to do its work, because if they're meant to be together, they'll eventually be. But right now he feels he didn't chase her enough, but it's already too late, seeing that she's already married with a kid. All these memories flooding back to Anthony's mind make him sad. Mace now acts as the encourager, since he's been the one encouraging her all the while. She gives him the same Fitzgerald quote he gave her earlier. Anthony just smiles. While sitting by the roadside with Anthony, Mace, knowing fully well how Anthony can be, begs him not to laugh before she goes ahead to ask him if she's ugly. Typical Anthony, he still laughs anyways, but tells her she's beautiful. Mace doubts what Anthony says, but he tells her that he wouldn't have come along with her if she were ugly. Mace, as if she's been wondering why Anthony has been willing to follow her to Baguio and around, can't help but ask if it's because he likes her. Anthony thinks that since he's single, has extra vacation leave that he didn't get to spend in Italy, and received an invitation to Baguio from a beautiful girl that is fun to talk to, then there's no reason why he should have refused her offer. Mace wonders if any man will still like her, or if she'll still get the chance to have a relationship with any other man. She also wonders if she'll ever recover from the experience she had with her ex, but Anthony assures her that she'll be loved again by another man. Anthony tries to make her feel better and not belittle herself. He tells her with the way she loves, the love will be reciprocated, even if it's not for the person intended. But she just has to let go of her ex. She'll find someone new, and that someone new will even make her question her former relationship with her ex, and make her realize why it didn't work out. When Anthony's ex broke up with him, he made himself stop loving her and start forgetting about her. He even went to the topmost part of a mountain in Sagada and screamed out all his anger and things he couldn't say to her, and it made him feel better, even though the pain didn't entirely disappear at that point. The next day, they board a bus going to Sagada. Throughout their journey to Sagada, Mace sleeps on Anthony's shoulders. When they arrive, they realize they left their load in Baguio. Even though Anthony is not happy about it at all, Mace doesn't even panic, but tells Anthony to forget about it. After all, it's just luggage, and all she wants is just to be treated to a meal. Anthony takes her to the restaurant, but it's so cold. Seeing that they left their luggage, they're left with no choice but to endure. Anthony pulls off his hoodie and covers Mace with it. Then he goes ahead to rub his palms and put them on her ears, just to give her warmth. While Mace is sipping her tea, Anthony puts his hand behind Mace and tries to hold her to himself, but hesitates. After a minute or two of silence between them, Anthony can't get himself to do it, and just pulls his hand off the chair while they continue in silence. Anthony rubs his palms again and puts them on his ears, since no one will do it for him. Mace just looks at Anthony and tells him he's cute. It seems like they are beginning to like each other. At night, they get on a bus that takes them somewhere that looks like a camp, with tents and fireplaces all around. Mace can't help but wonder where Anthony is taking her. He assures her that she should just be patient, even though she's tired of it, but in the end, what he'll show her will be worth the patience. They decide to camp for a while. They then borrow blankets, because they forgot their luggage in Baguio. They both lay down quietly, facing the sky. Anthony asks Mace what she'll wish for when she sees a shooting star, but Mace doesn't give a precise answer, so he asks her again. As expected, Mace then wishes that she'll stop loving her ex-boyfriend. Anthony's wish is that wherever his mom is, he's making her proud. Mace asks if the shooting star is still there. She thanks the star for not allowing her to be alone, even though she's sad. Anthony wakes up the next morning and wakes Mace too. Then they go to the mountain. When they get there, Mace screams out her pain and anger in tears, while Anthony watches her quietly and comforts her afterward. They're back at Baguio, walking down the road like Anthony dreamt of. Mace is curious to know what happened in Anthony's dream when they reached the end of the road. However, Anthony replies that he woke up while they were walking. But he goes on to give it his ending, saying that she turned to him and said she'll forget her ex. They both enter a taxi that takes them to Mace's house. Anthony walks her down and she's surprised. She also wants to know where his house is, but Anthony says it's a secret. While they talk excitedly, Mace recognizes a car in front of her house, even before the person comes from behind it. It's her ex-boyfriend Marco, holding a bouquet, and she immediately asks him what he's looking for. He doesn't reply, and they both stare at each other. Anthony stretches his hand for a handshake and introduces himself, and Marco does the same. Anthony decides to leave them both alone, and he walks away quietly. Anthony appears sad, because he was already falling for Mace, but then it's like her relationship with her boyfriend is meant to be, and he is back for her. In the end, Anthony can relate the arrow and heart story to himself and Mace. He finishes up the story and makes a copy of it. He portrays himself as the arrow, and Mace as the heart. At last, some people are never meant to be together. They will only cross paths and nothing more.